From KGW News, this is Straight Talk with Laurel Porter.
Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. Oregon lawmakers began their 2024 35-day legislative session last week. And while it's billed as a short session, there's a long list of things to get done for Oregonians. Democratic Governor Tina Kotek has said this session won't be fancy. She wants lawmakers to focus on the basics, like housing. She's introducing her own bill to try to make big gains on a critical housing deficit in Oregon. The governor also wants to make strides when it comes to behavioral health. Lawmakers are tackling changes to voter-approved Measure 110, which decriminalized possession of small amounts of drugs. What does the governor want to see? Governor Kotek joins us to talk about her priorities and what the mood might be like in the session as a number of Republicans are now blocked from running for re-election. Welcome to my guest, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek. Welcome back to Straight Talk.
Thank you, Laurel. Good to be here.
You are now in your second year in office, just marked that last month. How are you feeling? How's it going?
I'm feeling optimistic. People are working really hard, focused on the top priorities of the state, and we're seeing progress. Let's just talk about one thing, which was my emergency order at the beginning of last year about the state of emergency around homelessness. We looked at those numbers just last month, and we had all the goals. In fact, we exceeded our goals around keeping people from becoming homeless, getting people into more shelter capacity, more rehousing. What I'm feeling optimistic about is if we set goals as a state, we are reaching them. We just have to keep working hard every day to get it done.
I want to talk about the legislative session, but before that, since you brought up homelessness, a recent PSU report said that Oregon has the second highest level of unsheltered people in the nation, and that homelessness went up 8.5% between 2022 and 2023, and there's only enough shelters for about 42% of those people.
Yeah.
And you point to progress and hitting milestones, but the perception among Oregonians and that report is it doesn't seem to be getting better. Where's the disconnect?
Well, we are still in the thick of the challenge, right? Those numbers predated the work we were doing in my first year. Our goal is to see those numbers improve the next time they're counted. That's why I re-upped the emergency order. We're not done, right? Our first goal was to say, can we all get together across the state, set some tangible objectives and achieve them? We did, and we're not done. That's why we're talking about housing development in the session, because the goal was not to build more shelters. We need to get people housed. They need shelters to get stable. We are building a stronger system of shelter services across the state, but people have to get housed. And that's why the only bill for session is about housing.
And you could have introduced up to 3 bills as governor in a short session. You chose one, put all of your eggs in one basket, this housing production bill. Before we find out what exactly is in the bill, how this one is different, paint a picture for us. How dire is the situation in Oregon when it comes to housing?
I think housing supply is our #1 challenge in the state. I heard it on the road when I was visiting our 36 counties last year. Every community has an issue. Folks who want to be in a community have nowhere to live. They've come to the community, we need behavioral health, right? There's a mental health professional who wants to move into a community like Roseburg and I don't have anywhere to live. This is an issue across the state. And then we see the most significant indicator of the challenge is too many people living outside, unsheltered. Some of the highest numbers in the country. That is the ultimate goal of not having enough supply. So what I have heard from folks is everybody understands that, and it's our challenge to step up to actually get it done, to get more housing into production.
You tried to get a bill through last session and it failed.
Yeah.
You testified last week, and we have some video of you at a hearing last week on behalf of your bill. So what is in this Senate Bill 1537, this new bill, and how is it different than the one that you didn't get through last session?
Well, what we did after the end of last session, as you would do for any important piece of legislation, is get everybody back to the table and keep talking. So the bill we have this session is frankly a much stronger, more comprehensive, more balanced version of the bill that was up last year, right? I don't look back, I only look forward. So we have a large coalition, 50 plus organizations who support this bill. We've been communicating with the conservation community about how to respect our land use goals, but also provide some expedited tools for certain communities. So I'm feeling that we heard the concerns from last year, we made a better bill, and what's really great is legislators have made this, not necessarily everything in my bill, but they understand that housing production is a top goal for the session. That in itself is progress.
Okay, let's talk about some of the nitty gritty in this bill. This has a price tag of $500 million.
Yeah.
That is a big price tag, $500 million. Does the state have the revenue for that? Are you going to have to raise taxes?
I believe the state has the one-time money right now to make those investments. And I would argue they should, because it affects education if a kid is homeless. It affects our ability to attract employers. It is an issue that affects the entire state. What the bill says is, let's jumpstart. Let's put a catalytic set of tools and investments out there to really jumpstart our production. It's not going to solve the whole thing, but we need it right now, get into the next building cycle. So you see a menu of options. Let's help our local communities who are doing the on-the-ground planning. Let's give them model codes. Let's make it easier for them to do their job. We need money for sewer, water. We heard that last year. It's like, well, we'd love to build, but we need a sewer connection or a water connection. Money for that. Money to say to developers who are building more middle income workforce housing, we need some incentives to get that done. And there's also goals in there around climate, right? We should invest in new construction that is more climate friendly. And let's talk about land supply, the issue that's been most contentious.
Yeah, let's talk about that just a bit.
Yes.
Go back just a little bit.
Yeah.
The last one, that might have been what doomed your bill, because you wanted to have cities have a one-time leeway
Yeah.
to bring in 150 acres from their urban growth boundary.
Yes.
You got a lot of pushback from your own party, which ultimately doomed it. So what are you doing this time to try to get it across the finish line?
Well, I think one of the challenges of last year is like we moved too quickly at the end of session. That's always a bit of a difficult environment. We are now following the process is a lot deeper, right? 7 months of conversation. Early session conversations with legislators. Here's what's in the bill. And I said to legislators, you might have to make an amendment or two, so get it done, right? So I suspect we will see an amendment this week or in the future to get us done. And I support legislators doing it. My message to them is be as bold as you can be, because that's what we need.
And your office has said that Oregon needs 500,000 units over the next 20 years just to meet demand. And this bill includes 30% that would be affordable housing, is that right? And workforce housing?
So one of the issues is if we are going to say to communities that they get an expedited tool for an urban growth boundary expansion, not going into our forests and the things that we care about, but if you need as a city and you meet certain criteria, 30% of that new construction within that expanded boundary has to be affordable. That would be some of the strongest affordability requirements for new development in the country.
And this bill also includes a new state agency, the Housing Accountability and Production Office. Okay, now folks at home are going, okay, another state agency. How is this not just another level of bureaucracy and red tape?
Well, I think one of the things that we have basically said over the last several decades, local government, you go figure it out. We'll just stand back. The state, because this is a statewide issue, has to be more proactive. So we will have an office that is focused on the needs of our local government in a way we haven't been before. So again, technical assistance grants, making sure we can mediate through challenges around development in a much quicker fashion without giving up our values, but saying, can we move this quicker? Model codes, right? Make it easier. Every local government shouldn't have to make this up. We have to make it easier for local government on the ground to get the development underway.
Another issue that lawmakers are tackling, this is a controversial one, is Measure 110. That's the voter-approved measure that decriminalized possession of small amounts of hard drugs. A lot of Portlanders have been really upset, and Oregonians in general, with what they see as the impact of Measure 110 and open air drug use. Portlanders see the livability impact on downtown. Lawmakers are looking at recriminalizing this. You have been a supporter of Measure 110. You've been reluctant to recriminalize and make changes. How are you feeling about making changes to Measure 110 now?
What I am hearing from legislators is they are trying to take a comprehensive approach. When I was running for office, it was a very simple conversation. It was like, should we repeal it? I don't think that's where Oregonians are. They're still not there. What they want is they want it to work better. So what I'm hearing from legislators is that they're trying to tweak different things to ensure that people who need to get in recovery have a better pathway, and that we're doing what we can on providing those services. What I've said to legislators is, bring me a bill that is comprehensive and actually gets to the goals. Addiction and what people are suffering, I would say practically every Oregonian probably knows somebody whose lives have been affected by addiction. Probably not fentanyl, but maybe fentanyl. I had a text message from a friend the other day who said, my son died of a fentanyl overdose. And it's really impacted my life. We need to do something. This is a super dangerous drug. And Measure 110 is designed to say, throwing people in jail is not the answer. And we need to make sure people can get into recovery and into services. And that's what I'm focused on. I want legislators to bring me a package that actually improves things, not just as a bunch of political rhetoric. So we'll see what they bring to my desk.
Well, there's a discussion about the penalty. How severe should it be? Democrats want it to be the lowest level misdemeanor, and Republicans are pushing for a bill that has the highest level misdemeanor right below a felony. Where do you fall?
Well, I think what you're seeing is a very important, sincere policy disagreement of how you provide incentives for people to get into recovery. What I'm hearing from most of the legislators right now is they want to provide, if you are connected with law enforcement, if the criminal penalty goes back to a misdemeanor, are you deflected into a program that's going to be more helpful, right? I believe at the end of the day, we will still have the most progressive approach to dealing with this, even if there is a change in the violation to a misdemeanor.
So would you sign a bill recriminalizing Measure 110?
If that bill comes to my desk and it is comprehensive and I can say, the filter I'm bringing to it is, will this make it better? Will it make it better for the people who need the services? Will our communities be safer? If they can pass that filter, then I can sign the bill. And so you're going to see treatment discussions in there. You're going to see issues around criminal justice. You're going to see issues about what do we do with the folks who are selling, right? It should be a comprehensive package, and we'll see. It'll depend on what it looks like when it gets to my desk.
You talk about treatment, and that's a big problem because there aren't a lot of options. Oregon has a severe shortage of treatment beds. You commissioned a study recently to see exactly how many residential treatment beds Oregon has, how many do we need. Describe for us, set the expectations. What can we expect? When can Oregon have enough residential treatment beds?
Here's the good news. We have a much better sense of what we need. When I got in last year, my first year, I was super frustrated. I couldn't get any answers. I said, well, Washington State had a study. Why can't we have that study? So now we have much stronger understanding of regionally, how many hospital beds do you need? How many treatment detox beds do you need? So now we have to build a plan over the next 5 to 10 years to actually provide that. So the expectation for people is things will be better because we know what we need to build. Money that is on the table now will go to the right places. Before it was kind of like, here's some money, go do what you think. That is not a system. We are going to be better at systematizing this. And we will see new beds. I mean, just remember last year, because the city and the county and the state are working so much better together now under my leadership, we were able to get those 70 beds that Central City Concern is going to run. We all put our money, and now we own, Central City now owns a new facility that by middle of this year, we'll see 70 new beds in the Portland area on treatment. So we have to be responsive and we have to plan. You got to do both at the same time.
And the city, county, and state are cooperating on this fentanyl emergency that you declared last month, a 90-day fentanyl emergency. There's already a command center up and running in downtown Portland. How's that going, and what do you ultimately want to see at the end of those 90 days?
Yep. So it's a new day with the way the state, the city, and the county are working together. And I want people to know that we have good, hard conversations about working together, and we are improving how all these governments can use their resources together. The fentanyl emergency was about setting up a unified command, as you've mentioned. Right now, think about it. You have some really smart people who are doing good things, sitting in a room saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Can we do it differently together? What are the gaps? What more do we need? At the end of the 90 days, I want to be able to say we have a sustainable structure in place where the three governments can work together, that they're improving their outcomes, and they know what they're actually shooting for. We're going to have a set of metrics, outcomes measures of like, we need to do X, Y, and Z. Here's how we're progressing. Right now, it's not as organized as it could be, but with the fentanyl crisis emergency declaration, we'll have that organization I think we need to make progress.
We've talked a lot about a lot of the problems that Oregon's facing and how you're trying to tackle those problems. Tens of thousands of Oregonians left the state in 2022, the most recent numbers that we have, and Republicans blame the Democrats for the deteriorating conditions in the state. Rising homelessness we discussed, the failure of Measure 110. They see a school system where kids don't have the basic math and reading proficiency skills, dismal mental health system, a lack of residential beds. Democrats have been in the governor's office now for decades. Don't you bear a lot of responsibility, a lot of the blame for what we see happening in the state?
One of the reasons I ran for this office was to put better mechanisms in place for things to work. People should be frustrated. I'm frustrated. I just said, it's like, we didn't know how many beds we needed. That's not how you govern, right? So I'm not going to worry about past criticisms. I want to show what we can do over the next couple of years so people can say it is different, that we're actually using our resources more effectively. I say to people practically every week, it's not about more money. Yes, resources are probably necessary, but what are you going to do with them? How is it going to make things different? What are we doing with the money we have now? I think it's about the frame you bring to the work, and as my team can tell you, I say the word operationalize a lot. I want to make sure we can actually do the work.
And see more Oregonians stay in the state?
Well, yeah, I think if, first of all, we have a lot of, we live in a beautiful state. I spent the last year traveling the entire state. We know how gorgeous it is. We know what we have here. We will continue to see people move here. What we're not seeing is the increases that we've seen in past decade. That's a housing issue. In a lot of ways. We're going to improve our schools. We're going to have more housing. I think look at the work we're doing on semiconductors. We are investing money in our semiconductor industries. We're going to see people and companies come here because of the infrastructure we're building around semiconductor manufacturing. So I think when people make complaints, and the Republicans, that is their job to point out if they think things aren't going well. My job is to say, okay, how can I make things better for folks? So people want to be here and love the state. People love the state. They have great ideas. When I was visiting Oregonians last year, I met up to 1,000 people in our conversations. They care about their state. They love their state. They have great ideas. My job as governor is to help them do that for their communities.
And talk about the Republicans. The Oregon Supreme Court recently ruled 8 Republican lawmakers are blocked from running for re-election because of Measure 113, that they didn't show up to too many Senate floor sessions last session. That includes Republican Senate Leader Tim Knopp. And there may not be a lot of incentive for them to come to work this session. What's the mood like in the legislature, and do you think you'll be able to get done what you want to get done?
Well, I want to thank all the leaders at the end of last session, which was very contentious. The Speaker, the Senate President, the Republican leaders, everybody kind of said, hey, we got to do this differently, even when emotions were high. I made sure they were all talking to each other. And now this session is really focused on policy work. That's the basics. They are focused on housing and behavioral health. That is not a partisan issue. So what you're hearing is, we're just here to do the work. And everybody showed up on opening day. I think we're going to get through this session because everyone's committed to getting the work done. Before we go to break, I do want to mention that February is Black History Month. Yeah. And last week you signed a proclamation commemorating that month. I know that's important to you. Tell me about that event briefly. Well, as we know, Black history is Oregon history. And the proclamation, the celebration is about the resilience of the Black community and their role in helping us, frankly, live up to the values of the United States of America, which is everybody has an opportunity to be their full selves and to thrive. And I know this year, annually or nationally, it's focusing on the arts and culture. We just have a vibrant Black community in Oregon, and I just wanted to celebrate it with a wonderful group of folks. It was fantastic. Well, Governor, it's time for us to take a break. We'll talk with the governor about the Portland teachers strike when we come back. What was learned and what's the governor doing about it? We're back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. We're talking with Oregon Governor Tina Kotek. She marked 1 year in office last month. What's on her mind as she begins her second year as Oregon's top leader? Welcome once again to Governor Kotek. And when we talk about the future governor, we have to talk about education. Yeah. And the Portland teacher strike last fall took a toll on so many people, parents, teachers, administrators, and students, especially students who lost out nearly a month of class on top of all that was lost during COVID. As the governor and the superintendent of public instruction, what did we learn from the strike? What we learned from the strike is our districts are challenged to meet the needs of their students given the way our resources are structured. So first of all, that strike was hard on everyone, and I was heavily engaged because I wanted to make sure we get those students back. So my commitment right after the strike was 3 things. 1, let's help our educators right now who need additional tools to help manage behavioral issues that are in the classroom. You heard that in the strike. The teachers are really struggling. We're focused on that. We're going to help have a plan for our districts. 2, the funding issue. Is the way we move money to our districts based on what they actually need, right? We have to modernize the formula. I know that sounds a little specific, but how we determine what districts get in money needs to be actually meeting their needs. I would also say it's never just about the money, as I said before. It's like, if we were looking at additional new resources, are they getting the outcomes we need? And lastly, we need to know what districts have, right? Part of the issue of the Portland Public Strike, if you remember, there was disagreement on what the district had and didn't have. So one of the asks we have in this session is a small legislative ask for a transparency office in the Oregon Department of Education that says, here's the money in, here's the money out, here's what districts have, because that baseline understanding is going to be critical if we're going to make any changes.
Well, last week we had on Multnomah County Commissioner Julia Brim-Edwards, who also sits on the Portland Public School Board. She was very involved in negotiations.
She's a busy lady, yeah.
And she has an ask for lawmakers and for you for more money this session. Let's listen to what she had to say.
Just this week, they found out they had about $550 million new revenues coming in, and my message to them is a high-quality public school system is foundational to the health of our communities, not just Portland Public Schools, but all the state. We are going to have to make significant cuts this next year if we don't get $41 million additionally from the legislature during this short session. So my message to them is, if you want high-quality public schools where students get the support they need, we need additional help during the short session.
So, Governor, will you push for more money for schools in this session?
Our top priority with the one-time dollars we have is housing and working on behavioral health capacity. It would be imprudent to just roll that money up into our schools because they'd have another budget cliff in the future. What I am committed to is making sure that the 2025 discussion we have for the next 2 years is based on better understanding of what districts need and focusing on outcomes. And we are going to be a strong partner with our school districts. I've been very clear with our districts that I am focused on education, but more money this year is not going to happen because we have to focus on housing and behavioral health.
So that $550 million she mentioned in the revenue forecast, is that designated for the housing production bill?
Well, again, we have some uptick in ongoing revenue, but a lot of this money is money that was not spent in the last 2-year budget. So it is not good budgeting to say that is money that we would roll up into the state school fund. So, but one-time resources like investing in housing production, behavioral health capacity, that's a good way to spend that money right now, and that's what we're going to focus on.
So schools have to wait until the next session, it sounds like.
The school budget that they do have, I know that districts are challenged. We have districts in union negotiations across the state. My message to them is, get your contracts settled. We know that when we come into 25, we're going to be having a different conversation for the resources you need.
I want to give you a minute, too, to mention your summer learning program, though.
That's where we should be spending money.
Education lines, $50 million for a summer learning bill, House Bill 4082. You're partnering with Representative Susan McLean. What will it do?
So again, I think we need a longer conversation in the state about what we do over summer. The most successful states, I think, who are seeing better outcomes for their schools and graduation rates just have a much more significant investment in summer. So the $50 million of one-time dollars for this coming summer will be to help districts improve learning outcomes so students are going to be better ready in the fall. And we're still coming out of the pandemic. Summer learning is important. I do think legislators should do the $50 million. Again, it's one-time money, but I think it'll be well spent.
You mentioned the tour that you took across Oregon. You visited every one of the 36 counties in Oregon, and I understand that every time you went to a farm, you wanted to be sure that you got to ride a tractor. We have a great picture of you on the tractor. There you are, behind the wheel of the tractor with John Deere there. What's the appeal?
I think that's Tillamook. That's a dairy. So if you're going to understand what people do, you need to see their tools, right? You would be amazed by the type of technology that our farmers and ranchers are using today. I'm sure the ag community is going to be like, we know that. But if you're an urbanite like me, you're going to be like, what? So being out there, and I was one of those kids who always liked to get on the tractors at the state fair back in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I have a few photos of me on equipment.
We have about 30 seconds for a final message you'd like to share with our viewers tonight.
I want Oregonians to know that their state government and their governor is 100% focused on the top priorities of the state. There are always a lot of things coming at us, but we are focused on housing and behavioral health, and we haven't even talked about early literacy, and I'm glad we talked about summer. Those additional things we can do to make sure our kids are successful. My ask of Oregonians is have hope, be involved in your community, try to help us be all part of the solution to make things better, and we have a great state because of the people here, and I know we can solve our problems.
Governor, thank you for joining us here on Straight Talk. Always a pleasure. Good luck in this short session and the rest of your second year in office.
Thank you, Laurel.
And thank you for watching. Be sure to join me next week when we talk with mayoral candidate, current Portland City Commissioner Renee Gonzalez. We'll see you next week for Straight Talk.